I'm Caryline Boreham. I'm a lens-based artist and I live in Auckland. I'm currently working on a project called Volante, and this is a photography project that investigates sites of UFO encounters. The photographs are colour, and I had a show of the works down at Situ Project in Christchurch last year. And I'm kind of really interested in these sort of everyday sightings as opposed to the sightings that make the news, because there are some kind of quite major sightings that are quite famous in New Zealand. And so some of the information will allow me to place the camera in the pretty much the exact position that person was standing in when they saw something in the sky that they couldn't explain. But other times there's a bit of interpretation, so it might say they were standing in a particular location or on a particular road and looking north to south. And so then I will go to that place, and I may not be standing in exactly the same position, but I will find a location where if I was there at the same time as that person and looking in the right direction, I would also see something. So some sightings have a lot of information around what was seen and when it was seen and how long it was seen, and other sightings have not as much information, so it just depends on when that sighting was reported. So some people will be reporting the sightings years after they saw it, and some sightings will have drawings that come with them, so I'm also interested in the drawings, and I've started to photograph the drawings as well as going to the landscapes or the areas where something was seen in the sky. But at this point, the work that's been shown has been landscapes. I don't photograph at night because I want the everydayness of these experiences to come out in the photograph. So when you stand in front of the photograph, you might wonder, why has this photograph even been taken? And then there's this sort of psychological layer of this experience that someone has had in this landscape. When I'm there, it is just, there's nothing special about that landscape, but what's special is to think that someone has had this experience that they just haven't been able to explain. This project has expanded, so I'm still photographing the landscapes, but I'm also looking at the files of UFO sightings in Archive New Zealand. There's a particular file that I'm interested in that dates from 1955 through to 1986, and it's a whole bunch of letters that have been written in, and they're quite lovely because each letter is written in different handwriting. Some of them are typewritten, all sorts of different paper, and it's just this really kind of beautiful collection of history, and people are just curious. The response from the organisation that it's been written to is really respectful, and it's just, people are just really curious, but they're not making this leap. So they're curious, but they're not necessarily going, we're being visited by aliens. They're just going, I'd really like your opinion on what was seen. I shoot on a medium format camera. I shoot with Kodak Portra. That's a 120 film. The reason I shoot on a medium format is because I want highly detailed large prints at the end. So I don't process the films myself. I send them away down to Wellington to WPS, or Wellington Photographic Supplies, and then I scan them. So I scan them on an Imicon scanner, and then I do some processing on Photoshop, and then I usually send them to a really amazing printer called Sanji Karu, and we spend quite a lot of time just making sure the colours are right, because often when you shoot film you get some weird colour casts that you have to deal with. And then I print normally about 120 centimetres across by maybe 80 centimetres down, so quite large prints. The type of paper I print will depend on my subject, so I usually use Ilford, but for the Volante series I've moved to a new paper called Ilford Gold Fibre Silk. It took quite a few test prints to get the colours right in that, so that paper treated colours, completely different to what I was used to with the paper I chose to use for a lot of my interior work. When I get to the location, I normally take about 5 frames. So I'll do like a diptych, and then I'll do a single shot, and I might take a couple more. I use a Mamiya RZ, which I've had for about 10 years, and I have used it for pretty much all my fine art work over the last 10 years. So I know it really well. In previous projects, so some of those interiors that I've photographed, I'll just take 1 shot. So there's a real confidence in knowing your gear and knowing how it works and trusting that it will work. I always use a tripod. The Mamiya is really heavy. It's quite cumbersome to hand hold, and so I don't tend to hand hold it. And I use a light meter, and all my equipment is it's pretty old. And even though I lock everything off and try and get things as straight as I can, sometimes the horizon line is a bit off, and I don't correct that when I present the photographs. I quite like a little bit of imperfection. Because a lot of my photographs are really formal, so they have a really wide depth of field, everything's really in focus, things are fairly straight. So when I presented that work down in Christchurch, I didn't correct the faulty horizon line, so the images would be sort of slightly askew in terms of where they were on the wall. And I always, I do like a little bit of imperfection in photography. I think photographers are so, I think just by its nature, with photography, things do need to be pretty bang on, and I think we can get a bit obsessed with that. And I like to let go of that sometimes as much as I can.